2025 is almost finished and in the history books, and 2026 is upon us. If you remember last year's year in review of 2024, I stated that this year was the year of sadhana 2025. And so I hope you all engage in that deep spiritual practice this year, and I'll explain to you what next year is, but I hope you all had a good 2025. Next year, I have a few challenges for you, and hopefully that you can commit to these, which will make sense when we understand what next year is about. And the reason I'm trying to challenge all of you is because I want a lot of you to take your spiritual practice and understanding to a deeper level. A lot of people, unfortunately, in the modern day like to swim in the shallows. And I've never liked to swim in the shallows. I like to go out into the ocean where the sharks are and dive deep into the ocean of being so that I can understand myself and the world at a deeper level. And we are all capable of doing that, but we need to challenge ourselves, right? And so I'm going to explain to you all some challenges that I hope you can commit to. Now, first of all, next year in 2026, I hope that we can all engage in a mentality that we've sort of lost in the modern day due to technology. And this mentality is embracing the moment. Now, I don't mean embracing the moment and getting a snapshot of that moment, but embracing the moment, really living in the moment. We used to live in the moment not so long ago before smartphones were a thing, and you have a lot more vivid memories and connection with that moment when you're not trying to record that moment. And so not too long ago, the biggest dopamine rush or hit you could get was by living in the moment, right? And this is why I love taking people on pilgrimage, because when you take a person on a pilgrimage, you connect with each other. And what I notice on our pilgrimages is you see a lot of people keeping their phone in their bag or not using their phone at all because they are absorbed in the moment. They are connecting with other people and exploring the great places that we go to, right? So there's no time to record the moment because you are absorbed in the moment, right? And I remember being younger, and I have a lot of vivid memories from before technology where you would embrace the moment. It might be with your family or your friends or this and that, but a lot of people these days are yearning for returning to being absorbed in the moment, but they're so addicted to their smartphones that in recording the moment itself is what is destroying that moment. Actually, in the old days, there was hardly any way to record the moment because we didn't have a smartphone, this and that. We had cameras, and that was about all that you could do. And a lot of people couldn't afford a video camera or, let's say, a really good photo camera. And so people just lived in the moment. We really lived it, right? And so everything we would do, we were really embraced in that moment. And I can attest to this from writing books. So in writing books, there's a real catharsis in the process of writing the book and completing that book. And as I tell you guys all the time, I handwrite a lot of my books. I don't even use technology to type them up. I only use it after the fact. I will type up my books, but the process, I handwrite the books. And so there's a real catharsis in it. And there's more of a catharsis in the process of it, not just even in completing it, right? And so you might see people who climb mountains or become athletes and sports stars or even actors and movie stars or whatever it is you do. But when you're embracing the process and in that moment, there's a real dopamine rush in that. It's genuine and authentic because it's what we should be doing as humans, right? Being actively productive in the sensory world where we're contributing to the development of ourselves and also in helping others. And that moment is destroyed once we start to bring in a device to record the moment. That would be like me recording the process of me writing a book, which would be completely boring. Maybe somebody would watch a live stream related to that, but I don't know why. It'd be completely boring. But it's all about the process, right? It's about the process and embracing that moment. And that's where the real catharsis comes from. That's where the real natural dopamine rush comes from. Matthew McConaughey actually speaks about this a little bit in his book, poems and prayers. So not so long ago, before we were recording every single moment, we would achieve things in our lives. We would embrace the moment with our friends and family without pulling our camera out every 5 minutes. And these experiences reverberate in our soul, right? They reverberate in our soul. That's why sometimes when you speak to older people, they have such good fond memories before technology. And I can attest to this as well. I'm not that old, but I knew what life was like before phones and computers and everything like this. My first mobile phone was when I was 22 years old. So I had a lot of growing up without technology interfering with the moment, right? And even when I had that first mobile phone, I hardly ever used it. But unfortunately now, the moment is being destroyed. Now, what has replaced this? And this is what people don't think about. It's the ownership of the moment. Alan Watts even warned us about this way back in the 60s and 70s when he traveled to Kyoto in Japan, right? He was in Kyoto and he was marveling at the beautiful temples and monasteries. And all he saw around him was tourists, not just foreign tourists, but also Japanese tourists, all taking photos of themselves with the temples and so forth and so on. And he was talking about how the moment was destroyed because we were trying to record it, right? This is the very beginning of where we are right now. Obviously, there was no ability to share back then. You could only share those photos with your friends and families. But now we have the ability to share it, and this is where all the problems arise in destroying the moment. So what we do now is we record and share the moment, but we're not really living it. We're not really present in the moment because your mentality is in the future, is in sharing it with others. You're looking at each moment in the present moment as an opportunity to share with another person. Think about that, right? Think about that. You're constantly living in the future. And then people say, why is my life speeding up? Because you're in the future all the time. You're never in the present moment. If you're in the present, life may slow down and you may enrich your life by living in the moment and not trying to document each experience that you have. And so the real disaster for the modern day world is people's dopamine rush is not in living in the moment and embracing that experience, but it's in recording that moment and then pressing the share button. That's where the dopamine rush comes for people. Now, that is a real dangerous territory we are entering if that's going to be our reality going forward. So this dopamine rush that we have in the modern day is in posting things for others. It's not in the actual experience of living in that moment. It's in documenting it. This is a complete disaster and a real crazy psychology that we are starting to develop collectively. And I see this all around the world, actually. And so it's very dangerous territory. And it's time, especially for spiritual aspirants, to say enough is enough. And so when you really understand that, when you say enough is enough, you see that maybe yourself or you'll see others, that they get a rush from reliving those recorded moments, not actually being in that moment, in reliving that moment, right? This would be like sports stars recording themselves achieving some miraculous feat, and then instead of living that experience, they get more of a rush in sharing the highlights of themselves achieving those feats, right? And so we live in this illusory third-person reality. This is how we're developing ourselves, right? We're developing ourselves to this objective perception of ourselves where we live in the third person. And social media actually contributes to this. It trains you to live in the third person. It trains you to have an objective view of yourself where you're actually not yourself, but you are kind of witnessing yourself as someone separate from yourself. And that is an insane way of thinking that is developing all around the world. So we become objective viewers of ourselves. We are like voyeurs, right? And philosophers Hans-Georg Mauweller and Paul D'Ambrosio call this prophilicity, right? this is the idea of profilicity. So we are in this age of profiles where we live in the third person. We have this online persona which we curate and we project out into the world. But most of the time, that profile that we think we are is not actually who we truly are. It's just someone that we think we want to be, right? And this is causing a split in the psyche on an individual and collective level, right? And so we have to get out of this idea of profilicity and realize that we are destroying ourselves from the inside out from pretending to be someone who we truly aren't, right? And so we build our whole life these days on what we record of ourselves, and then we ask our friends and our family, what did you think of what I did? And that unfortunately becomes the definition of who you think you are. That's the problem, right? What did you think of what I did? That becomes who you think you are. Think about how insane that is. That again is you living in the third person. That is again you thinking that the profile is who you truly are. And it is not. And so my challenge to you is to embrace the moment, start living in the moment, and stop living in the third person and caring what others think. This is my challenge to you for 2026. Destroy this psychology of profilicity in your life and just embrace the moment. Remember, social media is not who you truly are. It's just an interface with others where others can see your face and what your interests are, but they can't tell much else apart from that. It isn't who you truly are. It's a representative of who you are. It's kind of like your own personal PR agent, but it's not who you truly are. And so that's my first challenge to you for 2026. Now, the second challenge is related to living in the moment, and it's about getting to what this year is about. Now, last year was the year of sadhana. Now, next year is the year of manana. Now, what is manana? Now, first of all, there are 3 progressive stages of spiritual progress onto enlightenment in Advaita Vedanta, right? And so you first have Shravana. Now, Shravana is the studying of texts, the listening to teachers, and then the grasping of that knowledge, the understanding of that knowledge is Shravana, right? It's the first stage that most spiritual aspirants go through. Then there's a second stage, which is manana, which is contemplation or reflection. It's like embracing the contemplative mind. And then the third stage and last one is nididhyasana, which you guys know I talk about a lot on the channel, which is basically non-dual meditation or the meditative mind that is fully absorbed in the ultimate Brahman, right? But what we're focusing on in 2026 is manana. So manana, as I said, is this contemplative mind. It's the ability to reflect upon a lot of the teachings that you've learned, and you can see reality from different views and angles, right? You're not a fundamentalist, but you have embraced the contemplative mind, which allows you then to see from different angles. And so this relates especially to Vajrayana Buddhism in a lot of sense when they talk about the non-dwelling mind. And so this means your mind is not living under one belief system. Now, why it's hard for a lot of modern people, particularly sometimes people who grow up from Abrahamic backgrounds, why manana can be difficult to embrace is because manana is imploring you to live in a non-dwelling mind and not to dwell under one specific teachings. Now, a lot of people struggle with this idea because in Abrahamic cultures are cultures of one book, right? So you have one doctrine that you live under, and the idea of having a contemplative mind, seeing reality from different perspectives, is something completely new because from the Abrahamic traditions, there's only one perspective between all 3 of those traditions, right? But when we look at Dharmic cultures and Taoist cultures, right, they are not cultures of the book, but rather they are people of the library, right? And that's, you often hear this in India when they talk about Dharmic cultures. They are people of the library. And even in Taoism, right? Taoism, people may say, oh, their main book is the Tao Te Ching, but Not really when you look at it, because you've got the Chuangzi, you've got the Wenzi, you've got the Laozi, you've got the I Ching, you've got all of this vast plethora of texts that make up the Taoist tradition. Even if you go into the Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor's Chinese medicine classic, you've got all of these books that surround the tradition, because there's not one book that defines the tradition. There are many. And so the challenge for people with that Abrahamic hangover is to get out of this mentality of trying to live under one doctrine and one book, but allowing yourself to embrace the non-dwelling mind where it doesn't fix on one thing. And then you can see reality from many different angles, which helps you to develop spiritually, right? This is what in the ancient times, a lot of people would refer to as a metaphysician or an occult practitioner and so forth and so on. But many of the great sages were metaphysicians like that. They understood reality from many different perspectives, which helped them to develop and grow. They didn't fix their mind on one thing. So my challenge to you in 2026 is to embrace the year of manana and get out of dwelling under one single doctrine and allow different teachings to infiltrate your being, which will help you to develop. Now, in regards to the book I want you to read next year, I could mention many books, right? I could mention many books, but there's one specific book that I would like you to read, and it is Revolt Against the Modern World by Julius Evola. Now, why would I want you to read this particular book? Because Revolt Against the Modern World is a great book for deconditioning and de-brainwashing your mind. Now, that is essential for any spiritual aspirant to truly develop. We live in a world these days where there's this belief in this illusory default psychology that's in the world that society shoves down everyone's throat. And this default psychology that everyone unfortunately succumbs to unconsciously and unknowingly is created by people who have a vested interest in keeping you spiritually asleep. They do not want you awake, right? And this is where Revolt Against the Modern World comes into play. Because Julius Evola expertly dissects modernity and highlights the blind spots that have come into our lives from following this default psychology and eliminating spiritual traditions from our lives. So he pinpoints the problems that happen because of this, and because we've unconsciously given away our spiritual traditions without even knowing, right? We've unconsciously done it because we believe in this default psychology as if it is the superior way of thinking, but it's usually driven by people who have a vested interest, and they're usually very wealthy people who don't have any relationship to you and I. But you know who did? Julius Evola. And that's why he wrote Revolt Against the Modern World. And it's one of the most important books for you to sharpen your understanding of spirituality and your ability to articulate the path. And that is something that many of us need to do, actually. We need to come to a state where we can even explain what this path is and who we truly are, right? This is what I refer to as sort of divine fluency, right? Having a fluent language and understanding the metaphysics of life. And that's who Julius Evola was. He was a metaphysician. And this is why Revolt Against the Modern World is very important. It'll sharpen your spiritual aptitude, and you'll be able to articulate the greater knowledge, the metaphysics of life, which is another higher level of growth on the spiritual path, instead of just waxing lyrical about this or that, just paraphrasing other teachers and this and that. It's all mind or this and that and, blah, 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 but not actually having a true knowing. If you can articulate it, that's a sign that you actually know. And so Julius Evola goes into the metaphysics of life in Revolt Against the Modern World and pulls apart this default psychology. Now, on top of that, one of my challenges to you is I hope that you have an opportunity to read at least 4 books this year. Now, I say 4 because 4 is an achievable number, right? If you can read 4 books, just 4 books I'm asking of you, then that is great progress actually, because it's a lot more than one, right? And I'm not setting some high bar for you. You get a lot of these people who are interested in self-help books and this and that, these self-help teachers, right? Where they say they read a book a week and this and that. And you know, it's all BS. It's all to sell that book. But I'm not telling you to read 20, 30, 40, 50 books a week because that's ridiculous. Just 4 books, and I want you to really read the book, the physical book, not on a screen, and definitely not an audio book. A lot of people are addicted to audiobooks these days, but the fact of the matter is you cannot retain as much knowledge as reading it on paper, because the act of reading a physical book is an active activity where you are engaged with the book. Whereas when you've got these things in, it's a passive activity. And you can't retain all of that knowledge because it's just someone literally talking to you. And most books are at least 200 pages. And so that's roughly around 7 hours of content. And a lot of that you're not going to retain. But if you read the book, the actual book, then you will retain a lot more knowledge. So hopefully you get the chance to read at least 4 physical books, and this will help you develop on the spiritual path. Now, the next thing I want to challenge you with is detechnologizing your life, right? I think I just coined that term, detechnologizing. But eliminating as much technology from your life as possible in 2026 to help manana to deepen, to help the contemplative mind to go deeper, not to swim in the shallows, right? And so ask yourself if this piece of technology that you have is making your life simpler. Or if you're interested in a lot of these new tools that are out there in the world, there's a lot of AI tools that people say to you, oh, this is going to help you and this and that. But run everything through a test. Is this going to make my life simpler or more complicated? And we know the truth to this, right? Because as we've gone down this technology path, we're constantly told that all of these pieces of technology will make our life simpler, but then our lives get so busy in the maintenance of keeping up with every little piece of technology we have, every little app and platform we have, which doesn't make our life simple, right? So run everything through the ringer and test it out. Is this going to make my life simpler? No. Okay. You remove that from my life. So basically slow down and stop your busy life so you can harness something that is deep within you that is often eclipsed because of how complicated our lives are. And what is that? That is the creative spirit. And this leads me into the next challenge, is in 2026, forget about making constant content and this and that. Think about art over content, because each and every one of us have the creative spirit. You are a mighty being. You have something deep within you that is waiting to be shared with the world, which is brilliant. But our lives are so complicated that a lot of that is masked over, and it's so deep within us that we can't even see it. We don't even know it exists, right? But that creative spirit exists within each and every one of us. And so through manana, through constant contemplation, you'll begin to peel these layers away. And then you'll feel that creative spirit begin to be rekindled, right? And then you can then think of something deep you want to express with the world. And I'm not talking about just frivolous content. We're in this world of content creation, right? We're not in the world of art, right? And so we need to embrace art over content, right? A lot of content you see on social media is just completely superficial. It's out one day, it's forgotten the next. Art is not like that. Everything that I have created that has value has been a long, drawn-out process where it has enriched people's lives. And the things that I've made that are frivolous, they're frivolous. They're out one day, forgotten the next. So it is important to share with others value, right? And so instead of thinking about the content economy, start to think about the value economy. What value can you provide the world, right? And so art has value. Constant content, frivolous content has no value other than making that person maybe a lot of money because of adverts and so forth and so on, right? So choosing art over content is the way to bring value, not only to the world, but also to your own personal life. And the last challenge I want to share with you is something I talk about every year with you guys, going somewhere new in 2026. I remember the Dalai Lama once said that it is important to go to a new location every year. Now, it doesn't have to be on the other side of the world. It can be the nearest town or city. But the importance is going to a new location, because what that does is it helps you rewire your brain, where you get out of the rut, you get out of these neural pathways that are so hardwired in your mind, where you go to a different location and things work differently and you have to adapt, and it helps you grow spiritually, right? Where you're out of your comfort zone. And you can only grow when you are out of your comfort zone, particularly if you go out of your comfort zone for a longer period of time, not just one day, right? So if you have the opportunity, make sure that you go somewhere new in 2026. Even for myself, in 2026, the goal is to get to Sri Lanka for the first time. And if you guys don't see me in Sri Lanka in 2026, I expect you to kick my ass into gear and get over there, right? So make sure that you pick a place that you want to go to and commit to that, right? A lot of people get uncomfortable when they commit to, all right, I'm going to Sri Lanka, but then the day gets closer and it's like, oh man, but it's pretty comfortable at home, and this and that and blah, blah, blah. No, turn that weak inner dialogue off and turn up the volume of the spirit of exploration, which you have within yourself as well, right? And so it is important to go to a new location every year, as the Dalai Lama said. And so make that commitment, and that'll enrich your life at a very deep level. And so that's basically it. That's 2025 in the books, people. That is it. I hope you have enjoyed the content this year. Please leave a comment below which video was your favorite this year. I'd love to hear what was your favorite video, or if you have a group of favorite videos, please let me know. I always look forward to reading your comments and your opinions on my work. And also, who of you out there has read my new book, The Tradition of Natural Taoism? Please leave a comment below if you've already read this book or you are going to read my book. And if you have read my book, please head on over to Amazon and Goodreads and leave a review if you enjoyed it. And last but not least, I've got an amazing tour happening in Thailand in January. It's completely sold out, but later next year, I'm planning on another pilgrimage, or maybe two, and I would like to hear where you would be interested in going. 3 of the options that are on the table are South India tour, where we go to places like Arunachala, Pondicherry, Chennai, and so forth and so on. North India tour, where we go to the Mahabodhi temple, where the Buddha became enlightened, Varanasi, where the Ganga is, and so forth. And then the third option is the Nepal tour, where we go to places like Pashupatinath, and we go to Namo Buddha and all of these places in the Kathmandu Valley. It's an amazing tour. All 3 tours are amazing. Leave a comment below if you would be interested in any of those 3. So that's 2025 in the books. I hope you've all had a great year. It's been an honor and a privilege sharing all of my work with you in 2025. I don't take any of you for granted, and I love and appreciate you all, and I wish you all the best in 2026 and beyond. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.